It is Wednesday, my dudes, and you know what that means. That's right, it is time once again to revisit Velocity Lake, the theme park I'm building in Planet Coaster, and then recording the process of me building it, editing it into a little video, and then uploading it to YouTube. You guys get the idea. I am trying to drag this intro out a bit because it's a long video. It's a very long boy, and we've already done a lot of the discussion around the thing we're working on in this video, which is, continuing work on the B&M Giga Coaster that we started all those episodes ago. That's it. We're going to be continuing work on that. So, I've already kind of discussed a lot of the things that would need discussing about this roller coaster. Certainly, I've covered the actual layout of the track ad nauseum, because that's all we've really been working on these past few episodes. We did build the station building. That was pretty significant, actually, but, it's not done. The maintenance shed, for example, has no canopy, so that needs working on, and obviously there's just lots of empty grass here. It's clearly not finished. So that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. We're going to be finishing the queue line at some point eventually. You can see I was playing around with the layout a fair amount, but this is what you can see now is pretty much how the layout is going to be, minus the fast track queue that we haven't added yet. We're going to be doing that, adding all the curbing. I'm going to add a little canopy on that round area of the queue, and then we're going to work on some of the surrounding scenery. Like I say, it doesn't look particularly realistic because it's just in the middle of a big grassy plain, so we're going to be adding a bit of infrastructure around the station, fencing, terrain editing, and we're going to be building some little shops next to the ride as well. I've said before in previous Planet Coaster videos that I always like to have the roller coaster of a certain area in the theme park serve as a sort of central focal point. Like all of the shops and flat rides around it are kind of follow a similar design aesthetic to the station building and indeed the actual track colors of the ride itself. So for example, I don't know, there are obviously themed roller coasters in this park as well. For example, the most obvious choice would be the Industrial Revolution coaster, which is very, very heavily themed. So naturally, all of the surrounding buildings are very heavily themed as well. But maybe an example of something where it's not immediately obvious would be the RMC wooden coaster we built a while ago. It doesn't have a real theme itself. It's actually very, very generic, but the actual coaster supports are wooden and they are colored purple. So a lot of the fencing around the rides and pathways of the area near that roller coaster are all purple, and they follow a similar sort of aesthetic to, they're purple and they're made of wood, basically. And everything just kind of follows the same sort of color scheme of the roller coaster. So that's what we're going to be doing when it comes to constructing the shops near to this roller coaster as well. Now, how far? We're only 3 minutes in. My goodness, we are only a tenth of the way through this commentary, and I feel like I've already adequately discussed everything that I needed to that I need to discuss. Sorry, I may not sound particularly coherent because I'm very drunk. Not true. I have a nice, refreshing can of Pepsi. Pepsi Max, to be precise, just to try and combat the very, very warm office I'm currently sitting in. We've been having some great sunny weather in the UK these past few weeks, and the way my house is angled in the world, when the sun starts to set, so in late afternoon, which is typically when I start doing these commentaries, it shines directly into my office and it's very, very hot. So I kind of closed the curtain to combat this, but I don't have the window open because I don't want people to be able to hear me talking, because they'll think I'm a crazy person. Probably because I am, but they might think I'm even crazier just talking to myself. And this room itself, it's very, very small. The walls are, you guys might have seen my real life videos and seen the walls of this room where it's all covered in foam just to keep the sound nice and good sounding. There's no audio reverb. Echoing would have been the right word in that sentence. So it contains heat very, very well. I keep the door closed again just to minimize echo. My computer is basically an Aga. It keeps the room nice and toasty. What have we got in there? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 140mm fans in it. Nope, I tell a lie. There's 4 140mm fans and 3 120mm fans, and it's got some pretty power hungry components. The graphics card is a 2080 Ti. We got the processor is an AMD 3950X. And this is what I mean. It's so warm. I'm literally going foggy. It doesn't help that I kind of in a weird spot. at the moment. And this was something I wanted to mention in this video as well, that you may be familiar with my mantra these past few weeks of me saying that I've done all of the commentaries for this coaster back to back to back to back, so that I know what I talked about in previous commentary, so I don't end up rehashing, similar topics every week and make the commentaries horribly boring, or at least more boring than they might otherwise be. However, I work as a clinician in the NHS, which is the National Health Service for us in the UK, and you guys may be aware there is currently a situation going on around the world which is putting a lot of pressure on health services. So people like myself, work has not been as easy or as simple as it has been in previous weeks, and indeed the rest of my life. Work's been very, very difficult. Not difficult, but it's been very different. And it's been a weird transition adjusting to this different lifestyle. So I think coupled with this, I've just come back from a full day of work. The heat, I'm very tired in general. It's gonna be a fun ride for all of us. Pun intended there. Not to mention, as I said, I think I started this topic and then didn't finish it. I usually record these videos back to back to back to back, so I keep the topic on focus. But because of the situation, which I'm not even sure if I'm even allowed to say it on YouTube, but because of the situation going on, it kind of disrupted my normal Planet Coaster workflow. And in terms of the time I set aside to make Planet Coaster videos, that all kind of got shifted a little bit. So as a consequence, I haven't had much of a chance to make Planet Coaster videos. So I can't remember the last time I sat down and did a commentary for Velocity Lake. It's been over a month. I'm almost certain it's been over a month. So I literally have no idea what I talked about last episode. I feel like I might have talked about beer, because that's a pretty safe bet when it comes to my commentaries, but that's all I got. I don't even know what we talked about last episode. So this is going to be a real journey for all of us together. Oh yeah, I really hope all of that sounded cohesive. I feel like I feel like I spent so long just rambling, which I guess is basically what these commentaries, that's the precedent I've set for these commentaries at this point. And again, we've got a long video. It's just basically, it's the same stuff happening over and over again. I'm building a fence here. It's like the most convoluted fence design ever. I regretted it massively, but then I kind of didn't want to undo all of the hard work I'd just put in making all the fencing thus far. So I said, we're going to stick to the fence design. And I think now it's all done. I do like the way the fencing looks, but it was a real arduous process making it all. There's so many different components at different angles of different thicknesses and all that. It was a very a strange fence design to choose in retrospect. The reason I like making custom fences, particularly for roller coasters, is because the stock fences, you can see that I've said this before in many episodes in the past as well, so sorry for the retreading of ground, but the stock fences, the actual vertical supports don't change their orientation whether or not they're on a slope. Example, as you can see, for the staircases here, the actual vertical supports remain, vertical. Like, they remain 90 degrees to the surface of the earth. They don't just tilt to line up with the surface that they're sitting on, which is what the stock fences do. So if you want to maintain a realistic vertical fence piece, you either have to use a Theme Maker's Toolkit item, which I try and avoid using Theme Maker's Toolkit, or you do this. You make a completely custom fence design. So that's what I'm doing here. That's me. That's my bit, talking about the commentary for a second. I mean, yeah, it's been, just going back to all the stuff I was rambling about, it's been a weird time, hasn't it? I don't know how you guys have been affected by, the various, I know most people at the moment, I don't even know, what episode are we on? I think this is coming out for me next week. I'm trying to remain at least 1 week ahead of my Planet Coaster videos. So this is currently episode 43, tomorrow for me, on Wednesday. So I lied to you. I said it's Wednesday, my dudes. It's not even Wednesday, my dudes, for me. It is Tuesday, my dudes. God help me. Yes, tomorrow for me. So last week for you is episode 42. This is episode 43. So who knows, in a week's time, maybe everything will just be fine. But I don't think it's going to be quite that simple. So I think all of this will stay relevant. I don't think anything significant will happen between now and then. But who knows? This is all happening so fast. It's weird. These are strange times. We're living in the history books, aren't we? We really are. But yeah, it's just lots of little things. I'm assuming lots of people have had their lives disrupted. One of the ways in which my life has been changed, aside from obviously me working in the healthcare field, has had quite significant changes to me. But I was having my house renovated before all of this happened. So the house is now partly built, partly just building site. My main thing was, and I feel like I might have talked about this on a commentary before, but now this is the situation. When I moved into this house, there was a very small, narrow workshop room, and then a very big square kitchen, but it was very outdated. Now, these two rooms are separated by a wall that does not it's not load bearing. You can knock that wall down. So I decided we basically gut the kitchen, gut the workshop, knock down the wall, and then rebuild it all. Have this big open plan kitchen diner, like where the wall was. That could be like a breakfast bar, and the kitchen's like in the little alcove behind it. It was going to be great. And it's all there. I have everything I need. I just don't have the skills to put it together. So we had a builder around first. He came in, basically completely stripped the workshop. Like he boarded up the door to it, pulled out the wall, removed the radiator from the wall, took out all the electrics from it. So that's just now bare. Like it's just floorboards. And then the kitchen is all kind of left vaguely functional. Like all of my food in the cupboards, which were removed from the wall, is now on racking I've had to build. The kitchen table is now the work surfaces of the kitchen. There's a micro, so we haven't really got a kitchen table now. There is some worktop space available still. Like the sink is still connected, luckily, and the oven still works, but that's it. It's a very minimalist kitchen, so we've not got the greatest kitchen setup at the moment. Like I was saying, like it would be done now if this lockdown hadn't happened. I mean, obviously I'm not against the lockdown. We needed it to flatten the curve and maintain or keep the pressure on health services as low as possible. But when I say I hate the fact the lockdown happened, I just hate the fact that it needed to happen, that this situation is even a thing. Bold statements on this channel, as always, I know, but that's a summary of things. That's what you've missed in my life when I haven't been doing commentaries these past few weeks. Kerbal commentaries are still ongoing, but I don't tend to even get a chance to just talk about things, because on Kerbal commentaries, unlike Planet Coaster, which is basically largely the same thing happening for 40 straight minutes, Kerbal Space Program, then you've got the time lapse, you've got the launch, and you've got the transfer. There's a constant stream of stimulus that I could just talk about. Planet Coaster, it is quite difficult to do these commentaries sometimes. A lot of people in the comments, right, you should do a podcast. I'd love to just listen to you ramble for however many minutes. And I'm like, well, this is what this series basically is. This is just basically a series I could just soapbox on. I don't really talk about the commentary. I don't really provide commentary for much of the footage, because much of the footage just kind of is very self-explanatory, and like I say, is very repetitive. I'm really selling this series, aren't I? If this is your first time watching Velocity Lake, then this is probably not a very glowing description of the series, but it is what it is. Like I say, I don't really make money from this series. This doesn't get anywhere near enough views, and I always feel like I'm complaining when I say that, but I'm not. This series is not about making money. I love playing Planet Coaster, and I love being able to share me playing Planet Coaster with you guys. And I was thinking about, the future of this channel and all that, because Planet Coaster is an old game now. Let's face it, this came out in 2016. That's ancient history for internet land. So, I don't know, maybe Velocity Lake will be my last Planet Coaster park. I mean, there are other games I've been playing. I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing recently in my downtime. And, the Switch is actually really good. I just bought I think I was talking about this not that long ago in a commentary. Who knows, though? It's always, everything is kind of bled together into just mush for me these past few weeks. But I remember at some point I was talking about getting a Switch. I've now bought a Switch, and I've got Animal Crossing on the Switch. I've been playing a lot of that. Been looking for some ironwood furniture. Guys, I'm now going to abuse my position of power as a YouTuber. If you guys have the ironwood DIY recipes, please give them to me, and I will give you 10 turnips. That's the series. That's the furniture series I really want to get. The Ironwood furniture. This is not. But I'm saying I could make Animal Crossing videos. I feel like nothing happens in Planet Coaster videos. My God, nothing at all would happen in Animal Crossing. I just spend 40 minutes fishing and catching sea bass. More like a C+. Am I right, guys? Someone out there got that joke. Well, anyone who plays Planet Coaster gets that reference. I don't know. Whatever. What have we even done? What have we even done? Let's look at the screen. I feel like it's been 15 minutes and nothing's happened. It's because of that fence. It's that blooming fence. It was such a stupid design. Well, it wasn't a stupid design, but it was a very convoluted design that took me ages to actually refine. I'm pretty sure, luckily, that's it now for the placing of that specific fence. Everything else will hopefully be slightly faster. Well, okay, we're finishing off the placement of this fence. So I think from now on, once I finish placing the final parts of this fence, everything will be a little bit faster paced in terms of the actual variety of content you're seeing on screen. I hope. One thing I'm actually going to mention here that I didn't mention in previous, I use this asphalt surface covering because it blends in really well with the tarmac path type. But I'm not actually using the correct texture. If you guys watched my recent mini-series in Planet Coaster, the Micro Park Challenge, I actually mentioned that there are 2 types of asphalt covering in this game. One is the one I'm using here, which nearly matches the paths, but doesn't quite. But then there's the other type that actually does perfectly match the path types. I didn't realize that it actually completely matches the path types whilst doing my Micro Park Challenge. So at some point when I next fire up this park's save file, I'm gonna have to quickly change that so the actual pathways completely blend in with the ground. So in case you guys are wondering why I'm using the wrong kind of surface covering to match the paths, that's why, and that will be changed. Although that being said, I think this is all a very bad example because that path type isn't actually the tarmac path, so it wouldn't blend in. But the actual exit queue that you can't really see, oh god, I just choked on nothing just then. The actual exit queue line that you can see there isn't even the tarmac either. Okay, whatever. At some point in the series, I have used... God, I'm full of regret now. But at some point in the series, I know I've used that tarmac path that didn't blend in perfectly with the ground, but now it does. And now I'm going to move away from that. That's horrible. I feel very ashamed of myself. Just talk about this. Putting the safety railing on, making sure that guests can't just wander in to the transfer track area just there. And... I guess then we could just continue working on the infrastructure around this area. So then I've got this little challenge now. It's the pathways around this ride. They're not straight edged. They're not they've not got like many right angles or things that work well for the building style of Planet Coaster. So I've got to try and come up with an idea for a building that can kind of follow the curve of this path organically. So that's going to be what the challenge was when it comes to building the shops. Although that being said, I haven't actually finished building the pathway at all. Well, I have finished building the pathway, but I haven't finished building the fencing and the canopies for the pathway. But that's going to be something to maybe you guys could think about in the back of your mind as you watch the rest of this train wreck of a commentary transpire before you. So this was an idea I had in my head. I didn't really plan it out, and I didn't really base it on anything specific in real life, although I know canopies like this can and probably do exist in real life. I didn't base this off a specific thing. So very, very simple design. Just 2 street lamp poles, one of the rectangular arch-shaped pieces connected to the said poles via the cable pieces, and I've just placed them along in a little circle like this. And I thought it was a really nice, effective way of making a little queue canopy, and I was really happy with how this came out. I'm not doing it here. I'm just placing them at the moment. But once they're all placed, I'll alternate the height of the canopy pieces. That there's a little bit of more variety in the actual overall aesthetic. It doesn't look quite so, I don't know, boring. I don't know if boring is the right word, but it breaks up, it makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more potentially realistic as well, maybe? I have no idea. But that's the little canopy pieces just there. And I could not be bothered to use my horrific fence design for the inner queue just here. So what I'm doing is using the stock fences. The stock fences are perfectly adequate for flat pathways or pathways that don't have alternations in their height, because, the supports for the fences, the vertical pieces will always be vertical. They don't need to point at any other angle. So that's why I'm using the stock fences for the inner path rather than use my own custom fences. I'm saying all of this like out loud to myself, and I feel like I'm doing a horrible job of explaining what I mean. How is there an actual fence engineers in the comments below, of which I'm sure there are tens? What is that? Is it got a name? Just the vertical fence support, the vertical pole? It's not like the axis of anti-core. I have no idea, but it's not going to name just the vertical supports. You guys know what I mean, right? It has to remain vertical even when it changes incline, which the stock fences can't do. That's kind of what I was trying to get at, but I was doing a horrible job communicating it. But hey, it allows me to make these disclaimers and spend more minutes explaining what I just said, thereby making sure that I definitely have a commentary for the entire 40 minutes of video, which is essentially just me placing fences for 40 minutes. I tried to, and it feels like, I don't want you guys, I know the cynic in me would probably think this as well. I'm not trying to drag these videos out for ad revenue. Again, as I've said, I don't really make any significant money at all. I've probably made like £100 in total from my Planet Coaster videos over the course of my lifetime. I really don't do these reviews, so I'm not dragging out for ad revenue at all, but it's just like, if I play it any faster, it will just be so sickening to watch, because you can see the camera moving around a lot as I place these concrete pieces. You know, if I sped the footage up anymore, all you could really assimilate is just the constantly moving camera, and then you catch a glimpse of something get placed and the camera just starts whirling around again. I've tried it. It's basically unwatchable. I felt very sick watching episode 41, was it, when I made the station that didn't stick around for very long. I destroyed it and rebuilt it in the next episode. So I played the construction of that station back very, very fast, and it was basically impossible, for me at least, to appreciate what was going on screen. And I'm the one that built it. I found it very, very difficult to watch. Maybe I just get very motion sick, because I'm not very good on boats and stuff. So maybe I'm just particularly susceptible to motion sickness when watching time-lapse at very high speed. But I feel like this is an acceptable speed to play the footage back, where you can kind of still see what's happening, but the video is going to be a little bit longer than it would be if I did speed it up anymore. So here we are, placing the fencing around the little area where the transfer track sits. Again, just keep the members of the public out. I'm fencing all sides of it. And this was actually, I'm not going to lie to you, this was going to be the final roller coaster of the park. But it's not on screen at the moment, but it's only ever on screen for such a short amount of time that I'm going to have to just describe it. And then when you guys next catch a glance of it, you can see what I mean. But the actual pathway that leads up to the area around this roller coaster is that white suspension bridge that comes from the RMC area. And it kind of forks left and right. And then in the center of that left-right fork is the exit queue for this ride. This, like I say, was going to be the final roller coaster of the park. But we've got that awkward junction now where you turn right for this roller coaster here, and then you turn left, and it's an empty field. And yeah, I thought that pathway can just run around the circumference of the station of this ride, but it would kind of seem like a bit of a waste. So we are going to build at least one more roller coaster. That's going to be the left-hand fork of that area after the suspension bridge. And I was thinking about, because I built this roller coaster quite recently, so I've got a lot of comment sections stored in my head as to what people want to see from this series. And, a lot of people are asking for various types of roller coaster. In the end, I went for a B&M suspended coaster, as in like Nemesis, that kind of coaster, not a flying coaster or anything like that. So it's going to be that. It's not going to be anything too spectacular. Don't get your hopes up it's going to be like this massive thing. It is going to be a B&M family coaster. But it's actually ended up becoming one of my favorite rides in the park, just because, and I say this about every single roller coaster I build, usually because I'm talking about them in chronological order, and every time I build a coaster, I get better at building coasters and better at placing scenery. So I guess there is some logic to be saying that every time I talk about roller coaster I've just built, but I really, really like it. Like, yeah, it's not the most exciting POV to ride, but the actual area around it is so nice. Like the actual theming and the color scheme and just the pathways, it all came together really, really well. I'm really, really proud of how it turned out. So I hope you guys are excited for that. I really, really like that roller coaster, and I think it's a really good roller coaster to cap this series off. Like, there is, don't get me wrong, a lot of work that still needs doing in this series that I'm working through, but you guys haven't seen. So the construction of the hotel, for me, is now done. I decided to completely overhaul the entire entrance to the park as well, because I hated it. Not the actual entrance to the park itself. What I mean is the entrance to the car park. It's all very claustrophobic and cramped, and I know I've talked about this in past episodes, that you kind of come off the roundabout from like the tunnel that emerges from the cliff off the edge of the map, and you're immediately on a roundabout, then you're immediately squished into the little ticket booths to get into the car park, and then you're immediately in the car park. It's all very squashed together. So I basically raised that entire area, as in like knocked it down. I didn't elevate the terrain. In case I needed clarifying, I completely destroyed that area and moved the ticket booth and I built like a really realistic road structure. So I'm very happy with how that came out. So that's going to be a big thing. That's going to be a good couple of episodes. I'm going to try and make it one episode, because I don't like dragging episodes out too much, but again, I don't want to make the episode either too long or just too nauseating with the camera movements. So who knows? I anticipate it will be 1 or 2 episodes, just that. We've got the construction of the hotel. Various warehouses got built. Obviously, the B&M family coaster and the area around it is going to take us some time. So we've got a lot of episodes left in this series. I don't know how many episodes we're going to get to. I would imagine we're going to get to at least 60 episodes. Although, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think what we're on now. 43. I reckon, yeah. I mean, 50. No, it's not going to be. It's going to be more than 50. Possibly 60 if we aim for 60. I'm going to try and make... I don't know, I'm thinking about making the episodes longer, just to cut down the amount you guys... Well, I guess, like, I kind of feel bad dragging out the construction of the station of this roller coaster over so many episodes at this point, but like this episode's 40 minutes. I feel I wouldn't want to make an hour-long episode of just me building a station. Although I guess I've done that in the past. It went that pretty well. So who knows? I mean, my analytics will say that people prefer the 20-minute episodes. So I don't know what I'm trying to get across with this. It's just because we've gone back to building this fence again, and I've sort of hit a wall in terms of what to talk about. So I've just ended up waffling on about nothing again. It's now gone, but that's a little thing I like doing when making gates to parks, is using that generic-y looking metal fence and just sort of stacking it one on top of the other very closely together. It makes a really good looking gate for staff access to the back part of this ride. And speaking of the back portion of this ride, or not back portion, but backstage area of this ride, just adding some little features to the transfer track just to make it look that little bit more realistic. I mean, I guess it doesn't look that realistic because there's not really any sort of infrastructure around it, like control points and things like that. But I think it works well for its intended purpose. So that's what I'm just doing here, just fleshing out the look of the transfer track, making it a little bit more dense in terms of the details, and that's what I'm doing there. How long did I just spend saying that? This is what I'm doing here. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing that. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing this. This is what I'm losing the will to stay awake, quite frankly. I feel pretty exhausted. I'm going to have another sip of my Pepsi. Get some caffeine in me. I'm not going to pause the commentary because, again, it adds valuable seconds. Oh, God, I'm so sorry, everyone. I guess the fact that all I'm able to do at the moment is literally eat, sleep, go to work, and that's basically it, because we can't go outside or anything. I've got nothing to talk about. Like, usually this time of year, I like to break out my kayak and hit the ocean, which I know is quite a good form of social distancing, actually, but all of the faff are required to do that. Getting into my car, loading it up, getting to a beach that potentially has other people there, unloading it, that's where it kind of falls apart as a social distancing thing, for me at least. That would be great, but yeah, I can't do that. Even though the sun is shining, I have to be stuck indoors at the weekend and I can't really do anything. It has been quite depressing, quite frankly, but it's meant that I've got no real stories to tell or things that have happened that I can discuss in this series. Like, that's what I do a lot of the time, is I talk about things going on in my life. So I've already talked about the big stuff. My work life is pretty hectic, but I legally can't talk about that too much because of confidentiality laws and all that. And obviously, the only real thing that's happening at home is the construction of my kitchen, or lack thereof. So that's it. That's me. That's my innings. So what are you guys up to? What have you learned about yourself, having to be stuck indoors all the time? Me and Beth played Cards Against Humanity, actually. We did this not that long ago. We did have a little bit of whiskey beforehand, because Cards Against Humanity is always quite fun when you're a little bit buzzed anyway. But no, we decided to play Cards Against Humanity, just the two of us. And when you play Cards Against Humanity with two people, well, basically you can't do it. So the way you can get around this problem, and you can play with two people, is you take, and this part's very important, is to find some sort of figurine. In our case, it was a cuddly guinea pig toy that will serve as player 3. And then the way this works is that one person is just the judge, or the card czar, as it were. And then the other person plays the card they think will win. And then the third player, you just take the top white card from the deck and play it, as a random card. This is always that, and that's how you play two-player Cards Against Humanity. It's also the most depressing way to play Cards Against Humanity, because every time I've done this, pretty much, the third player, as in the inanimate object, has always wiped the floor. Like, they always win. And even when I play with my friends and it's a big group, we sometimes say, let's add the random player. Like, let's let Spider-Man play, because there's a toy Spider-Man in the corner of the room. So this is just something that happened at university. There was just a Spider-Man model that just appeared in our house one day. Like, where did it come from? Did someone just bring a toy Spider-Man to a house party at ours? Why would they do that? And why would they leave it there? Was it a Halloween party thing? I don't recall ever hosting a Halloween party. Anyway, kind of a weird sidetrack, but yes, we had a toy little Spider-Man in our university house. Anyway, yes, that served as the fifth player, whatever, and again, it won by a landslide. So it goes to show the Cards Against Humanity takes no skill. In fact, the more you try and put skill into it, and the more you think about things, probably the worse you'll do. So take that for what it's worth. So that was a game we did. But what else can you play? A bit of chess, but see, chess is only really fun if you and the person you're playing with have a similar amount of experience with chess. Beth never really played chess before, so doesn't really know the rules, and I am very familiar with the rules of chess, and I'm not great, but I'm not bad either. Like, I can hold my own playing it. So it's like, I'll try and go easy on her, and I'll try and teach her the moves, but it's not really, I don't know how I can say this without sounding arrogant, but it's not a challenge for me at all to play chess. I will always win. So then there's other games. I guess there's video games. There's Animal Crossing. We've both got Nintendo Switches who play Animal Crossing. But it is a point where, like, you don't want to sit in front of a screen all day, but then there's not much else to do. You can go for a walk, but you get one walk a day. And me as a healthcare worker, I'm trying to avoid going out as much as I can. Like, we've been getting deliveries for our food and stuff, just because I don't want to risk getting something, not showing symptoms, so not realizing I have it, and then going into work and potentially that's a big fear of mine. So I'm trying to stay inside as much as I can to minimize all risks I can. You know, it does mean that I can't go out very much at all. So there's not much we can really do indoors at a point. It's just the same stuff over and over again. And by the way, here we are building a house. Not a house, a shop. I know, shock horror, right? Stop the presses. He started talking about the content on screen again. I'm building the shops I mentioned very briefly earlier that I kind of had a weird sort of shape to work with the pathway. So the way I got around that is the bit where there's not much space between the path and the ride. I've added this planter section. I added a little fountain piece just to serve as a point where you would attach a hose pipe to keep everything nicely maintained and watered. And then we're going to just attach this building here. So it's kind of, I don't know if you can see this, but it's kind of a V shape. The actual path edge on this part of the pathway. So I've got one part here, and then we're going to extend it out as a separate building to follow the path. Trying to keep it, basically turn that V into a straight edge. I mean, you'll see what I mean. If I'm not doing a very good job explaining things, it doesn't matter because you'll see what I mean very soon. So in terms of the design of this shop, it's not that great. It's very, very simple, very, very generic, and quite frankly, it's not very interesting. But, you know, it serves its purpose, and you find a lot of theme park buildings in real life. Like, okay, forget about your Disneys and stuff. Most theme parks don't really have that extra. Okay, it's not right of me to say theme parks in that case. It's just amusement parks, I guess, would be a better choice of words there, or fan fairs. Either way, theme parks tend to imply there's heavy theming, but a lot of amusement parks, for example, Six Flags would be an obvious choice, or even things like, you know, Cedar Point. They don't have much very heavily themed buildings. They are basically just purely functional. So that's why I don't mind all that much that this is not a particularly heavily themed building, and it's not a very interesting looking building either. And I don't know. Maybe Lowne Aerospace was in slightly more difficult financial times when this part of the park was made. You know, they'd had a few crashes. You know, they were basically stuck to doing Minmus missions. We couldn't really afford to splash out the amount of money we had back when we made the Industrial Revolution coaster. So we've got slightly more simple theming for this part of the park. Now, the other side of this little shopping street that I guess is hard for me to illustrate without you being able to see it, but there's like the other side to the path. We'll have a slightly better themed shop, and it's one of my favorite buildings in the park. It's Beth's favorite, actually. So Beth's my girlfriend, by the way. I feel like I've been saying her name, and you guys don't. If you're on my Discord server, you'll probably know who she is, but maybe the general populace of people that watch my videos won't. So anyway, yeah, it's her favorite building I've ever built in Planet Coaster. So hope you guys look forward to that. I think it's either next episode or the episode after. It's very soon. It's very soon. So I'm not sure exactly when that will happen, but hey, isn't that an exciting, suspenseful thing? I can add drama, suspense, wow, explosions. It's fun. This commentary is nearly over, don't worry. So yeah, very, very simple shops, although they were a bit plain. They were very... Makes you want to go to sleep even more than I already do. So I added those big, wacky signs to them just to kind of, you know, make them look a little bit more... have a bit more pizzazz to them. And I added that Ghostbusters thing as well because it fit. I don't really know what it does. I don't really know what happens when guests interact with it, but it looks kind of cool. And it breaks up the monotony of that big brick wall. And I will be filling up this area with benches and umbrellas and lights. And we'll be adding a few more plants and stuff, so it won't be quite as dull as it currently is. But we've got to do everything in baby steps, you know, with Planet Coaster. If something doesn't look too great, just keep working on it and keep on adding details. And eventually, you might end up with something as mediocre as this, but certainly I wouldn't go as far as to call it bad anymore. Now these lights here, I've mentioned this before in Planet Coaster videos, but the Planet Coaster selection of lights in the game isn't great. I kind of wanted a futuristic yet still generic looking light. There are lights like this in Planet Coaster, particularly the sci-fi lights, ironically, look fairly generic, but they don't give any ambient light. Like, you can place the sci-fi lights, and they don't do anything. Like, they don't light up the area they're around. There's only a small amount of lights in this game that actually, light up the area around them. That aren't like spotlights. Spotlights are great, but they're not good for providing ambient light for a pathway like this. These cubic lights are fine, but I'm not sure if I like the way it all ended up looking, like this cubic. I don't know, but I feel like the actual traditional architecture of the station itself and the whole curvy nature of the queue and all that. I'm not sure if the square lights fit the best, but they certainly fit better a lot. They've certainly fit a lot better than the Victorian Gothic style light, which tends to be the go-to light to use in this game because they do provide some excellent ambient lighting, like you can see there as I was flicking through them. But these Gothic lights here, like, they're obviously not as quite generic looking as the cubic ones. They do provide a fairly unthemed appearance whilst also illuminating the general area. So I kind of alternate between the round Gothic lights and the cubic lights for the lighting around this part of the park. I don't know. I think I'm just covering up one of the little hosepipe nozzles from that fountain piece, just with those fiberglass panels. I wasn't really trying to make it look like anything in particular. Oh my goodness! Hey, do you guys remember when I was saying that this pathway doesn't blend in well with the actual surface, and that's because I wasn't even using the tarmac path? Well, look at that! I ended up changing. That's why I knew there was a reason. Well, I suspected there possibly could have been a reason why I started talking about the tarmac paths not blending in properly with the ground, because I could have sworn this ride had a tarmac queue, and now I know it does. So, yep, it's still the same issue, though, that it doesn't blend in perfectly with the surface, but don't worry not. I will now change the surface texture of the area around that path so it actually does match the colour and indeed the texture of the pathway itself. Now, the ride at the moment is not that well themed. I was kind of going for a quasi sci-fi, like it's called Pulsar. It's fairly sort of futuristic looking in that it's all black and white, and the fence is kind of a cool looking design. So I thought maybe sci-fi would be a good theme to go for given everything. So I added those big prefab spaceships just because it kind of made it look a little bit more interesting. So that's what I've gone down there. And now we're just finishing off the backstage area of the little shop. So again, I like using those generic fencing pieces that come with the game, because if you can just offset them and clip them like I did there, they actually make a pretty convincing looking gateway, I like to think. Well, in this case, I've just used them for the rest. I'm sure I scrapped this plan and just used them as the gate. Oh, maybe I don't. Maybe I just made a fake shutter instead. It's been so long, guys, since I actually watched this footage back, and indeed, it's been so long since I actually built this part of the path that I don't really remember. In fact, when was the last time I even fired up a Planet Coaster? It was a while ago, I will say that. I mean, I've just been playing a bit of Kerbal Space Program before I started this commentary, just to get myself into the YouTuber zone, and I'm currently working on an SST. I guess it might have already gone live if the craft ended up working. So far, it's sort of been a bit hit and miss in terms of working, but it's inspired by the Star Wars prequels. It's an SSTO that has like a hyperspace ring around it. Like, it will dock in and out of a big ring structure, and that ring structure will have its benefits to the ship. It won't just be a purely aesthetic thing. So if it went live, I hope you enjoyed it. If it hasn't gone live, I hope you do enjoy it, unless the craft just doesn't work and I have to scrap the idea. So this could be a completely meaningless piece of commentary right now, but I am acutely aware that the video is nearly finished, so I don't want to start any new topics. So I'm just going to list some of my favorite periodic table elements. We got beryllium, hydrogen, xenon, argon, silicon, oxygen! And that was the element of surprise. Oh, that was terrible. I'm so sorry, everyone, for everything, really. On the left-hand side is a link to the full Velocity Lake playlist. The right video on the right is a video chosen for you by YouTube's recommendation algorithm. And there's things, you guys have seen outro screens on YouTube, right? So you know what to do. So goodbye.